All right, so as we come into the practice, I want you to have your sand on your feet. So when you are in this beginning Viparita Karani shape, you'll want to have your rear as close to the wall as possible. So when I orient myself to get into an inversion, one of my focus points is that I'm placing, interestingly thought about, the weight of my abdominal organs right on towards the diaphragm, right? So that's creating that strength cycle for the diaphragm, right? When you are inverted. So all this core weight or the supply of that is placing some weight down to my breathing cycle. So we're using this to stimulate respiratory. So you'll notice a difference in that cycle of movement in the beginning, and also the stimulation of the flow of lymph. So we'll add to that by putting our sand, if you haven't already, onto your feet, and encourage your better balancing bone cycle here of feeling how the feet kind of rest under the sand weight, and that length of the tail space. So you are trying to pin the tailbone onto your bolster. And then as you're pressing that down, then the hips feel a little bit wider. So you want to kind of celebrate that focus, because during the inversion, the diaphragm must lift, right, this weight as you're cycling through in this first pose. Head is on blanket or base floor. And then stretch your arms so that they either flow back into the hands, or perhaps your hands are moving outwards so that your elbows pull open to stretch open the chest fibers into cactus arms. You decide. Feel both. Feel what is the most experience for the upper body to feel balanced. So you want to notice where the balancing potential is in your upper bones. And then let's come into our first pose. We've got our feet in that flex pattern. We have the extension of the back line of the legs, and really welcome where the movement of the belly is achieving a little lift. And then on the exhalation current, it's almost completely easeful. There's no real energy that has to be engaged on the emptying of the lungs. So as you in-breath, filter the air in through the nose, feel the belly actually try to bulge, right, and lift. So that's that challenge with the organs, right? They put that weight to the diaphragm. And then on the exhale, it's so much easier on your diaphragmatic channel because it just flows back up to the base of the heart. So as you layer and start to absorb, legs up the wall, let your eyes close, gather your attention on the rhythm of your breath. Now feeling where the neck lengthens. So ideally the lines of energy in the spine are straight. There's not a lot of head nodding in this position or trying to tighten up the back bend. You want to find that you can rely or lie on your bolster, and then the spinal column back from that bolster releases to the brainstem. And the arms are fundamentally part of that flush of the lymph. So we'll be here about another minute. So explore the position of your feet, flexing, and the experience of the breath movement with each alternating in and out breath. Listen to the sound of your breath. And now as we start to shift our legs, I'd like you to keep that sensation of the tailbone pressing to the bolster. And then can you move the feet from the wall, off the wall, towards the first vertical lift off of the wall, legs straight. Okay, now scan the feeling of your legs straight now. I kind of notice what it's like when there's weight on the feet. And can you engage the muscles of the legs at all? Can you feel the knees slightly separate and that separation of the leg, one leg to one leg. And then as we start to guide into Baddha Konasana, it's that whole leg orientation gets kind of spiraled open from the root of the inner hip. So when I bend the knees, let's bend all of our knees on this one. We're going to carry that sand so it's shifting away, okay? And now when you slide back, I want you to actually push the blanket way back and slide back so that you are in Baddha Konasana with your feet on the bolster. Feet are stretching at the wall. So you want to feel the bottom of your foot actually get some sense of stretch. So my knees are out, the feet are touching to the wall, but really it's from the ball of your foot to the toes that's stretching. And then when your knees are open, monitor the position of yourself in connection to your actual opportunities in your room with your space if you need to move around. But get that feel of now the knees moving open, and then take on the hands together, interlace your fingers at the roots, push the palms to the sky. Keep those arms in that engaged pattern of pushing up, trying to flow the sides of the shoulder blades up. And then as you keep getting long in your side ribs, you're going to stretch your arms back overhead, but keep the hands off the floor. And as much of the arms that are from the elbows to the hands off of the ground. You might notice if you're using a blanket, part of your arms touching the blanket, but work towards reaching back, good, and find that extension. Now it still seems in the front body, I have to admit, it still feels front length, little bit of the front ribs. So with that position of your feet pushing into the wall, take a motion now to bring your knees to point up, step the left foot up at the wall, bring the right foot up, cross it to the left knee, and the arms could be here, back overhead. They could relax open to your sides if you've got enough room besides you to open out your arms. But we're going to take a block and we're going to place the block from that position. I guess our arms had to change anyway. Place the block being held by both hands to that inner right knee, and you're pushing the knee open. And you're being a little careful with your back of your pelvis not taking a big twist. So I've got to consider how much my leg itself can stretch versus torquing at my sacrum. So notice when you push on the leg with the block, there's parts of the leg that are attached to the back of the pelvis. You can feel the attachment right now. But when you push on the leg, can you palpate it with that block? So I'm palpating above the inside of the knee, towards the adductor peak on the inner thigh, right? Or it feels like the groins, right? Where I'm adapting the pressure of the block, massaging those tissues. Give it a little bit of time. If your arms get fatigued, simply stop and push with one direct motion open. Okay, now as you take that block aside on that right leg, I want you to get your seat as close to the bolster as it could be right now. Your rear is as close to that as possible. Can you push into the left foot and then make sure that left foot is directly front of the left knee, so it's not up the wall, right? It's directly next, right forward from the knee. And you are trying to manipulate that right knee to motion open. So I want you to push into the left foot. Keep that right knee open. The bolster gives you a barrier from the wall, so you can't get too close. Okay. Now reach under the left leg, behind it, and pull that leg to you. Lower the left foot, relax the foot, it doesn't touch the bolster, but as you pull the left leg towards you, realize that connection, inner thigh, wrapping around to the right hip. It's fairly impulsive into the hip right now. Or pulsive, if that's a word, pulsive. Hip pulsive. Okay, now uncross, right foot to wall, left foot to right knee, grasp onto your block, place it on the left inner leg, and go right into that connection. Now, you might even notice that the legs get into these curvy patterns when you do just kind of randomly go for it. So I find if my right foot is really directly forward from the knee, that's a big deal for creating that balance in the hip. Instead of me kind of just putting the foot anywhere on the wall, anywhere wall foot, I have to be very clear so that I'm working on that alignment. We don't want the bolster under the rear, right? So it's next to it, right in front of it. And then as you're pressing, palpate the inner left leg, get a little bit of touch and skin circulation. You can still have your head on the blanket. And then as you put that block aside, be clear here where that left knee is moving out. Flex the left foot. Position that right knee, the right foot directly to the wall from the knee. Push into the right foot. Open through the left knee. Flex the foot that's on the right thigh. And then as you reach to your right leg, before you get involved with trying to kind of pry the leg to you off the wall and to your body, noticing the connectivity in your back of your pelvis over to the left leg. So as I move my foot off the wall and grab behind the right leg with both hands interlacing, pulling to me, you might really start to notice the places you grip up. So relax the right foot, pull the back of the right leg, connecting, centering through the back muscles of the left hip. Now clarify the motion here from your hips. And then as we move from the back layer of our hip, we're going to actually weave all the way around the hip into the hip flexor at the front, right? So one of the hip flexors is the quadricep, okay? So as I start to uncross, I'm going to go right into the right foot at the wall since it's there. Sometimes simplicity is important here. So let's push that bolster now aside. It's not going to be needed until not sure when. Okay, so bolsters aside, and then what you're going to do is scoot your not walk your feet, but you walk them up the wall. You're going to scoot your tush a little closer to the wall. Now this is borderline working from bridge to shoulder stand. So you might like the blanket under your head. You might find that it really takes you away from getting the full circulation through your spinal column. And this is the extremely easy way to learn this pattern. And so even if you end up never doing a full shoulder stand at this point with neck concerns and you end up doing chair work with the shoulder stand, you want to get this fundamental down, period. So the hands are on the thighs, and then as I start to lift my hips up, I'm going to work with bridge pose, basically. Bring my arms overhead. So I want you to get a feel of that position. The knees point upwards, the spine stretches, and lower back down, arms besides your hips. So you get to lift up as much as you're comfortable. So here's the beauty of the home practice is you might find, wow, I'm too close to the wall. This is really intruding on my shoulders. Then you're going to shift your body farther back from the wall and feel a little different circulation through your body. Might be more comfortable. So you choose, but we are going to move our way into this balancing bridge shoulder stand pattern. So I want you to bring your arms overhead again and bring your hips to lift up. And now as you lift your hips up, stay with the position, okay? Reach your hands forward and down to the floor, so they're down from the legs, straight down to the ground, and keep that activation through the legs so you are trying to get a pure power through the leg muscles, and reach your hands together, interlace your fingers. Now, if this is a real challenge, you can also grab your belt, hold the belt, palms towards the ceiling, easy, right? About shoulder width, instead of clasping your hands. Okay, but I'm going to choose the belt for myself. It feels a little bit more supportive of my shoulder. Okay, and then feel that lift. Now walk the feet a little higher up the wall. Okay, get a feel if you can do that. Avoid turning your head side to side. Just trying to keep an eye on if there's any questions or needs. Now, if you keep the lift of your hips, you want to target that strength in the buttocks, right? So you can feel that really charged. Okay, now release the grip of your hands or belt and then take a block. Oh, I hope you have one nearby. And then place it under the back of the pelvis, mid to low height. If you're really comfortable with this high height, it's okay, right? If you can snag that high height, get your tailbone at that higher height, so it's a little more of a full shoulder stand, you can take that higher height, okay? And then you're gonna bring the legs up, straight up, okay? So now, since this is quite that experience of that diaphragmatic, tension and strength work with the higher the legs are, if it is too much with this, the third setting of the block, go down to setting 2 in Setu Bandha. Funny enough, setting 2, Setu Bandha pose. We have that lift and the legs are going to move a little bit forwards so that you're really balancing through the lower abdominal muscles. Yeah, and let's let the arms be down towards the wall, so they're reaching forward to the wall space, not overhead. And the feet are completely, purely sole full. Just let the soles be open, no sand. Feel the different dynamic from the first legs inversion. Right? It's a little different right now. It's perhaps activating, stimulating. Layer a few more moments. Feel the shoulders press back, the heart open. Keep that supply of openness going through the whole body. So if there's an area that you feel that's a little dormant in your physicality, which I'm going to describe as the legs sweeping down into the abdominal space and the heart, the throat, that kind of physicality, try to bring a little more vibrancy there. And your arms will be a big player, right? If I impact the back of my shoulders to the floor. Now, this could be one you carry along for 5 to 10 minutes. We'll be here for another 30 seconds. So you get a basic kind of review of these channels of movement. And then as you bend through your knees, feel the bend of the knees. Don't come down yet. Lift the feet back up. Get a little bit of energy through the legs. Bend the knees. Lift the feet back up. Flex. the feet, and then bring one foot at a time. Push a little into the wall. We're going to lengthen all the way down into a rib float pose. We'll do one more back pose. So I want you to slide your block away and get a length down through the spine. Let the vertebral lower down. Okay, slide the feet down. Scoot your head back on your blanket this time and make length with your legs. Okay, that's kind of a basic thing, isn't it? Make length with your legs. Push into the wall. Okay, you might be really far back. Hopefully you can at least hear what we're doing. You're going to push far into the wall like you're making some dents into your wall space. Okay, so I'm going to create that awareness in the back of my legs, the Tadasana leg pattern, vibrant through the legs. It's wonderful to do this with the wall below your feet. So you have something where you can make some pressure into, and then involve feeling the coexistence of both sides of the body. Yeah, I mean, when you're standing doing, standing alignment, standing at attention, it's interesting how you feel the fibers of your being from your feet up, because your feet feel, but right now you can feel your whole back body traced on the floor. Okay, so take a belt, bring it overhead. If you got your loop, you've kind of got it together already. You got your loop. If you don't have a loop, make a loop. Loop up. So you got your belt buckled into a wide loop. Okay? So I take the belt, I've got this wide loop, I'm going to lift it up to the higher part of my rib cage. Okay? So you can get a feel for that. And then we're going to move the right foot off the wall, bring the knee into your chest. Now you could take a few steps to get here. You could put the belt just below your knee and kind of pull the leg into you. Start to stretch the lower back. This is a very kind way to get to it. And then you stretch that belt forward under your right foot, and then you lengthen the leg up. Yeah, so I try to get my belt hopefully untwisted under the upper body. And then as I move it up high, get it close to that. Then I'm using the left foot into the wall to really activate and push. And I want you to get that belt really tight, right? So you feel that awareness of your breath around your ribs. And let the belt be high enough on your rib cage. So when you're breathing, especially that out breath, you can feel that experience and the response of the belt helping you stay interactive. Leg is straight up, right? It's not trying to go overhead unless it's easy for you to catch the hamstring farther back. Okay? So the arms for this one, we're going to stretch them up towards the ceiling, interlace, reaching up, as if your emphasis was holding the bottom of your right foot, that type of awareness. So your hands are not your belt right now. They're not going to take that roll on, but I want you to try to work with pushing up into the inner line, the inside bones of your right foot, the base of the big toe on that inside strip. And noticing your habit, it might be to kind of rotate the foot a little bit out or sink in. So your focus is to feel both feet pushing. However it ends up, right? They both push. Spine centered. Stretch your arms overhead. Try to come into it so you're back behind you with both of your arms reaching. Okay, now can you let your lower back soften? Bend the right knee. Now that bending could be many different angles, right? It could be different angles. different degrees of bending. The word is just pure and simple. You simply bend what bends for you. And then can you keep the bend that you have just this one? Try not to change how you're bending. And then bring the left foot up into the belt and switch the right foot down to the wall. Yeah, be prepared for differences. Maybe it feels like you need to get closer to the wall, farther away. Yeah, in the second side, if you came into that first side with your belt below your knee, like this one where you had your belt just below the front of the knee and you're pulling into massage into the back, take that first. And then those of us that are comfortable and feel pretty confident with the foot straight up, then stay here. But we have that belt around the rib cage. We have that fundamental pressure up into our left foot. Okay. Now we're doing this today without the sand on the thigh that's down. Now this could be a pose if you decide this is good medicine for your muscle, good muscle medicine. It's nice posing for your back, easing your back over time. You could distribute your sand weight, for instance, on the top of your right thigh, right? And it would make the stretch on the leg above a lot more intense. That's what it would do. So, and it would ground the femur, right, in the socket, and then you would have some really positive alignment patterns to focus on. So that's another thing about the sandbags or sandbag on this one. Okay. Now, when you're pressing, final few moments, we're not so focused on the arm exactly on this one, but I want you to bring your arms down by your side so the palms are on the floor besides your hips or down besides the upper legs. Feel your hands pressing down, and can you move your shoulder blades back and feel them motion towards the floor and the ribs moving with your breath. Anytime you got some belt around your rib cage, really use that time to activate the lungs, strengthen the back lungs. Doesn't mean you have to clench and tighten up. Okay, now we're going to start to come out and come to turn over. So I want you to move your hands up to your belt. And now as you come out, slide the left foot out of the belt, bring your arms overhead, holding the belt with both hands. And this was behind your rib cage right now, so it's probably stretching out the layer behind your base of your shoulders. So try to work that reach back with your hands, holding onto that belt as if it's kind of prying up the back of the shoulders for a moment. Okay, now keeping the awareness of that space, slide your feet in towards your seat, take the belt overhead and then roll to a side, any side, and come on up to all fours. Okay. Now the blanket is an option completely going forward. So if you don't have a floor that you can be with your knees on without a blanket, go for it right now. So take a block set, place the blocks on the sides of your mat, and then with your feet at the wall, you're going to open out the fingers, stretch out with your hands. Be aware that some of us do better with the blocks under our hands for our wrists on this cat-cow. And some might be more comfortable with the palms on the floor. Okay. So knees wide, round your back to cat, feel your head, lengthen the neck so the weight of your head drops a little forward. The spine reaches from the mid-back to the neck. And then inhale, arch the spine. Okay, feel that when you hollow through the core body, it's a movement directly internally lifting into the spinal column. And let's go into this pattern, cat-cow, for a few more breaths. Keep in mind, if your hands are on the floor, it will grow differently in your arms, the sequencing here. So they're both good and they're different, I find, with hands on floor, hands on blocks. If your wrist can tolerate hands on the floor, I would take the floor, but it has to be something your nervous system's content with. So alternate, continue for another 2 cat-cows. Feel the reach through the ribs. Feel that alternating stretch of your spine. Now, next time we move into the back line, rounding the back, it's clear that we're going to eventually dog it, okay? Because we've got our feet to the wall. So as you lift up your knees, I want you to keep your heels lifting up at the wall base so they're slightly tilted up. They're high enough that, you know, if you happen to have a wall space that gives you a little bit of a lifter, that's kind of nice. But regardless, when you push the floor away with your hands, I want you to look up in towards your belly, right, where the belly zone is, and that will open up the armpits. And obviously, the sound current changes for me when I'm upside down. Now, with the knees bending so that they really are apart, they are separate entities here. You're going to take a step with your right foot forward and use your blocks under your hands, mid to high height with your blocks. Lunge. Okay, left foot, heel is up at the wall. So why not get your quad to stretch? So we'll lengthen the top of the left thigh. I want you to push the ball of the left foot into the base, so you're at the base of the wall with your foot. And you're stretching through the front of that left thigh. So you can make this a restoring pattern. You can have your hands on your blocks. You can place your hands on the right thigh, so lift them up a little bit higher. If that feels like an opportunity for you right now, if your knee is comfortable with it and your spine is getting warm enough to get here, you will take the pose a little higher, but not required. But if you're coming up to a centered lunge, I want you to feel the front of that left thigh. How can you not, whether your hands are low or up? Feel that thigh and make sure that you're not on the center of the knee, right? So some people, when you're on your blanket here, you're going to go a little forward on the blanket. So it's a little easier on the knee, on the bone, and the sensitivity to a kneecap. So when I angle forward, you can tell when you lift up your back knee now, so much better on a knee, huh? To have it off the floor. I want you to reach your hips back and keep your heels slightly tilted on the wall. Don't get too much with your whole foot at the wall, but lift up your heels so the ball of your foot is still on the floor. And then lift up the toes on the right foot, the foot that's right directly below your nose. Okay, so keep those toes moving up, and your right hip might kind of push off to the side. So try to keep it going straight back sitting bones. Breathe. Okay, now come forward with that lunge. Take a moment, a mini moment for balance. We're going to push off into a high lunge so the hands lift up. Yes, prepare for some challenging experience with the left heel reaching back to the wall. Right, you do kind of want to dent into your wall a little bit here with your back foot. Stretch through the front of that left thigh, great. So hip flexor, flexorizing. Send your arms to reach back a little bit so you have that experience appealing into your ribs and your spinal strength. Okay, now keep this spine, this rift on your spine. So when you come forward, you might need to launch down your blocks. It depends on your balance right now, okay? So breathe. And then as you exhale, you're going to either bring your hands to your blocks and then step your left foot forwards, right? Or you're going to keep your arms up and step your left foot forward here. Just use the steadiness of the knees to come into this forwards chair pose. So you're standing next to your blocks. They're on the outsides of your feet, and your feet are together, but you want to feel like the big toes are touching, a little space at the heels, and reach your tail back. Right, there you go. So extend through your arms, find that full reach through the waistband, and then balance down onto your feet Like you feel if you were to move your rear to the right or left side, you'd fall over. So I want you to really get a feel of that narrowing into the lines of your feet. And then bow down to Uttanasana, forward bend. Exhale is gratifying here. So feel the sitting bones, separate your feet to what's comfortable for you. I like foot separation for my Uttanasana. And then bow into the legs and hold your elbows. And then as you get a nice connection with your hands on your elbows, let your head relax its weight. Weight of the head goes down. In fact, it goes so far down, crown of the head, that it's not important how flexible you are, but that you're able to convince the exhalations to carry the nervous system through the back body to let go. So your knees might be bending quite a bit. They might be lengthening the back of your legs. Let the weight of your head stretch your spine and your legs. A few more moments. Breathe here. Okay, now as you unwind your arms, take a little inventory of your balance right now internally. And then as you flow the hands to blocks, you're going to reach your feet close-ish and take the right leg, step it back to the wall. And then as we come down to that low lunge at your own pace, so you decide if you lower down that right knee to a blanket or the floor, you want to look back at the leg and ensure that you're stretching the front of the thigh. So if I look back and I stretch the right thigh a little down and I'm on my kneecap, I've got to work to move my left foot forward so it's balancing for my thigh muscles to situate themselves to lengthen my right thigh. You could put your hands on your left thigh. You know, it's a challenge. It's not for everyone. Some of us will know that's not the right thing for the knee. So you got to regulate your awareness around the knee itself. And then maybe your left foot is under the knee and you come on up. It's under the left knee. So lengthen, feel your tail space if it's pushing back, if it's helping you arch. Most likely you're going to naturally find ways to be easier on the knee itself. So you might feel the arch gets a little bit active in the spine. So you kind of take weight off of it that way. Okay, let's come on up. Let's come up to a high lunge. Back foot pushes into the wall. Left foot is under you. Now when you come up, it depends on if you've got helpers around you, like a wall or a chair or anything that you're hopefully not going to tumble over. But when you feel that knee drawing forward, can you create the arch in your spine, push back into your foot, yes, and then bring your arms up, and it might be a balance for a few seconds. Find your focus point in front of you, your gaze on a still point. Keep going with that length. Good. Excellent. Feel the reach upwards into your fingertips. Full inhale. Exhalation, we start to lower down. This time, we're going to shift our hands to the floor or the blocks. Step the left foot back to the wall. Into a downward dog pattern. So you're going to feel your hips reaching back, but it might feel like, well, like your butt's moving back, but not your hip bones. So I want you to work your waist to lengthen and let your head's weight descend down. You know, feel the amount of energy in your arms to create this position. My heels are up at the wall. They're a little bit up. Lower your heels down to the base-ish, as long as they'll maybe go a little bit down. And feel if you can do that position, the heels base, right to the base, the floor. Okay, now as I start to work my way back to my feet with my hands, I'm going to walk on back. I get kind of stuck at the wall because I'm so close to it. And then I want you to walk your feet away from the wall so your seat touches the wall comfortably. And then when you form that seat pressure to the wall, the sitting bones, you're going to reach your ribs forward like they kind of eject from the wall. It's like your ribs reach forward from your back, right? And then as you lower down, you let your head relax. Let the arms be heavy and feel your seat at the wall. Okay? So when your seat is touching to the wall now, can you notice that awareness of the legs? They're not very wide stance quite yet. We are going to take them wide. So what we'll do here is move our ribs a little bit up so you have the arch through your spine. Okay? Bring your hands up to your hips and then come up. Use the toe grip to help you lift up and turn to your left. Take a wide stance. What I want you to do is have your left outer foot against the wall. So however you have to create your balance. You're going to need your blocks pretty soon. But the first step here is that the wide stance is the important part. And when the arms lift up, you're going to work with that reach through the side body. Bring your left hand to the right wrist and stretch over to your left side. And try to feel where that center angle is through your hips, good, and the waistband motion. Come back and center, right hand around left wrist, shift over your arms, gazing, center, and arms towards the right side. The left arm, that's the support. Now, as you come back and center, hands to hips, take your forward fold. So you're in a wide angle. Now, when my hands come to the floor, what I'm going to encourage you to do is scoot your feet out to as wide of a stance as they can go. This should be your widest stance pose. So now it's not going to be a full splits because we want to activate the legs so they kind of have a charge through them, as if you're drawing up the kneecaps. So if you find that you need blocks under your hands, put them under your hands now. If you found that that's important, if your hands are on the floor easily, don't use your blocks, okay? Walk your hands back in center so they're right in line with your toes. And you're going to bend your elbows, either hands on blocks or hands on floor. Head lowers down, hips are going to lift up, not push back farther, but lift up farther. So that might mean your feet get a little closer. That's okay. Now, crown of the head to the floor. If it's not reaching down, I don't want you to force putting things under your head right now, so you're not going to kind of disable that length. I don't want there to be pressure that pushes your spine back up. So let the weight of your head stretch your back naturally. Keep the hands on the blocks or the floor. So remember, if you're using blocks, you're going to have them right under your hands, those of you using them, in line with the toes, and then the elbows move back. It's kind of nice if you're flexible to have your hands on the floor to try the blocks sometimes, because then you feel a deeper stretch in your legs, a little deeper if I have my blocks. It's a little different. Yeah, you almost feel like your legs are balancing on your arms. Okay, now come forwards. Okay, walk on forward with your hands on blocks or on floor, coming on up with your rib cage so you have that arched spine like you do in cat-cow. And then what we'll do is we'll turn to our right foot. And I want you to get these blocks now. So go out and buy some blocks right now. Turn the right foot out from the wall. So you're in a warrior two leg pattern. Outer left foot at the wall. And you're simply going to work on a little launching project here. So I've got my left outer foot to the wall, right foot faces straight directly, pivoting out 90. So I want you to be sure that your right foot toes are parallel out from the side here. And now as I work into balance, I'm going to use my block under my right hand, take it up to the highest height, and I'm going to lift up my left foot at the wall, okay, and then stretch the left arm up. Now you're in a Ardha Chandrasana, you're in a half moon, so if your right leg feels too outstretched, get your block a little closer in under your shoulder. It likely is a deep challenge. So if your fingers are kind of flailing in it, use the bulk of your arm to try to lift that left side of the body to turn open. Breathe. Notice stillness is important on this pose, finding a still point. Anchor your attention into your right leg. And now lower the left hand down. I hope you have a block for that hand too. Pivot the left foot at the wall so the toes face down. A little easier balance. A little more intensity in the standing leg. And then as you step that left foot, you're going to push it off the wall to join the right foot inside of your blocks. And then bend your knees and come into a half sun salutation. So you'll stretch your hands forward and come all the way up to a full stance, hands together, right above the crown of your head, head centers in between. Okay, so your stance is feet close. Now, as you feel that lift of the ribs and your jaw up, inhale, and then exhale, arms open, and lower down your upper body to your lower body, hands behind the legs. Hug your legs with your arms. Head bows into the legs. Breathe. You know, as we center down, we're going to reach our right leg back. And I want you to reach the right foot back to the wall and pivot the foot. So the outer foot is against the wall. Right foot. Balance your position of your left heel under the knee. So really feel where there's that connectivity, strengthening. If you're putting a lot of weight into your blocks, see if you can bring a little bit of energy into your left heel. I tend to kind of skip some of these patterns and then you pay for it sometimes later. Try to get the easy direction to balance. So get your hips under. You kind of feel like almost like your tail is tucking under before you lift up. So feel that your right hip is open. Now you're going to push down into your left foot and then lift the right foot up at the wall. Yes, if you're too close to the wall, if you feel like you're pushing away and you're going to jet out, then scoot your left foot back and try it again. Be sure your foot is not too high at the wall, so it's not a splits. So you want to feel your foot touch the wall. The foot's turned out to that right side and your left hand is on the block. See if you can push off the left foot, push off the block and bring the right hand off the block and turn, lifting your right arm up into half moon. Yeah, so keep working with the feel of the back foot at the wall and that rotation pattern all the way up into the gluteal muscles, right? It's almost, it wraps into the glutes as you send your right arm up. Focus on the twist through the rib cage. Breathe. It only helps. We're going to keep with that position. So I want you to let the right foot stay directly turned out. Lower the right hand to your block. Good. Halfway there, past halfway there. Turn the right foot facing down at the wall. And then I want you to stretch the right foot back and down to the floor with the foot parallel from the wall facing forward. So they're both sets of feet, or your set of feet, are parallel away from the wall. So I want you to directly traffic the legs to trying to lengthen them. Yeah, so try to carry yourself into this extension of the ribs. My blocks are underneath my arms, my shoulders now, so I'm going to shift them in and then work with that stretch of the rib cage. Really work the legs. This is a deep leg work. I find this kind of interesting to go from half moon and then into revolved triangle. So right hand is on a block. We're going to turn left with our left arm lifting and rotate. Left arm reaches. Right heel tries to stay stretching down, feeling into the calf. Woo. Glad we didn't save these poses for the end, huh? Bring the left hand down. Work the hips back like you're trying to press your tailbone back. Okay? And then as your right foot goes forward and change sides, the tail feels like it's kind of reaching back both directions. So now right foot is stepping, so it's forward. My hands are right under my shoulders on blocks. And then when my left foot is back, the toes are still trying to be forward. I know it's challenging. Your back foot might turn out. Do the work with elongating from the heel bones, both feet, right? Even if the back foot feels like it's mostly the front of the bottom of the foot, you push down. Still work. If your back heel needs to come up on the wall a little bit, that's okay. You'll get a little bit more energy out of driving through both of the legs. They're poker straight. They're trying to be balancing. Okay. Now really get that feel from the leg pattern. Take a focus here, left hand on the block. You're going to pivot to the right, bring your right arm up. Try to rotate, revolve triangle. Just get a feel of the whole skill set here in your legs, your back muscles, fundamental balancing poses. Okay, lower the right hand down, and I want you to bend that right knee, lower the back knee to the floor, come back to child's pose. Knees are wide. If you've got minimal props with you, we are coming to the prop heavy part of session. So if you want to get a bolster right now under your rib cage, take that, that's fine. You might slide the bolster between the knees and set yourself into child's pose this way with your bolster underneath your chest. So we'll start to sort out the props in a few moments here. So let the weight of your chest lower down. If you're quite comfortable without the bolster, you're going to still keep your hips reaching back to your heels and then lower your head down to your hands. Now come up from child's pose. We're going to move ourselves away from our wall spot. So if you are going to move your mat, you're going to actually slide that away from the wall, but I want you to come into center space and get your props of reclining support out. So you'll need your bolster, blocks, blankets, belts, and a sandbag. Okay, so the first pose we're going to do, center of the room, is a reclining hip crossover. So what I'm going to have you do is place your blanket so they're an easy assortment to grab, but the first prop is your blanket is behind you and your bolster is on the right side of you, on the outside of the body space. You're not going to be on it quite yet. When you lower down, yep, if you don't need the mat, don't use it. It's kind of an extra thing to push away. It might be really nice for you in your space to have it though. So some of us might decide for that. But let's come into this reclining hip crossover. I know that we just worked our hips a bit when we were doing our standing poses, and it's nice to get this kind of fully centered practice. So when you're on your back here, I want you to let your right leg lengthen and simply cross the left thigh over to the bolster. Okay, keep it simple and use your sandbag on the exterior left thigh. If you're using one of those grippy balls to hold the sacrum, that's an option. If you don't have that nearby, but you want something, you could always try using a block, just so it kind of brings a little bit of an anchor to the sacrum. And it's not going to be something that feels like it's really jabbing your sacrum. It's more like a reminding touch, because it does touch it. I use the narrow edge of my block. Stretch the left arm open, span the chest. Let your head roll to the left, so you have that spatial balance for the neck. Closing your eyes and come into this final phase of the practice, which might be quite enjoyable from all the upright work we've been going through. So invite the breath in through the mid-body. Feel the belly pulse with the breath. If you crave deepening your twist, you might bend the right knee a little bit further, so it feels like the right foot is kind of lifting up closer towards your rear. That might feel a little bit more elaborate in your spine. But this is a good part of the sequence where you can kind of indulge in feeling the labyrinth in the body, right? You can start to feel these different kind of pockets of awareness internally, because it's slower and deeper, differently than upright poses. And now what we'll take is the emphasis here with that crossover layer with the waist. Now I want you to take a belt. Okay, there it is overhead. Props are all nearby, but sometimes they're at your ear and you don't know. Move your left leg back in center and feel still that you're kind of tilted on your right hip, so you still have that warmth in your pelvis. It's still mobile. And then you're going to get your belt under that left foot and cross the leg over to the right again. So that leg is now a full leg versus a bent leg crossover. Okay, so that's the difference from the first position we just did. Now, you might tend to kind of hyperextend the back of the knee. That's not such an unusual position for the knee here. So I want you to, if you can, put your left hand on your left hip and try to keep that hip so it's moving across towards to the left foot, right? You're not trying to push it down and away. So keep it going across and really press down through the padding of the, all your four fingers, anything but the thumb on this one. And you're trying to push that across now towards directionally to the right, through the left leg though, isn't it? Okay, so you're trying to really cross fiber and then take a micro bend of your left knee. But I want you to still keep that fiber crossing over into the left leg to the right side. But you've got to bend your left knee and really cross fiber so you're strengthening and lengthening into the joint without hyperextending. So the bend of the knee is that important. Now the wrist is a challenge here on this one, your right hand. So you've got to find a way to hold your belt without torquing the hand and pushing your fingers back, which can cause some danger, right, in time, in age. Okay? So I want you to let go with your hand. Just let it go like you lost use of it. And then start to bend through that left knee and then come back and center. Okay, slide the right foot in. Remember this one we did earlier, right? We did this one beginning. Hold the back of the right knee with your left knee open and stretch the right leg up. Try to get that right thigh straight up. Pull. Now, if it's comfortable for you, you might find that you can get your hands at the back of the right calf. That's fine. Not required, but just know that there's ways farther to go. You can also put a belt under your right foot, right? and then pull. That's a nice line of energy in the hip. I like that one. Okay. Now bend the right knee or take the belt off in a few seconds, and then uncross and hold the kneecaps in a circle. Go about 3 to 4 times each direction and manipulate through the sacrum. Feel that simplicity in the low back of the waist. This is important, all these little sequences. And then as you bring your knees back in, you're going to take the bolster and shuffle it over to the left side of your space. Scoot yourself so the left leg stretches down, the right leg crosses to the bolster. Now, let's say your bolster needs a little bit more oomph to it, so you have more height under your knee. You might be putting a blanket on top of your bolster or a block, okay? So if your leg goes over and it's just up and it doesn't quite go down with the sand, then put a block under it. Now, if I'm using the block, I got to get that bolster in pretty close, okay? Because the block would need to be on my inside the knee to the center of the thigh to keep it so it holds with the sand, okay? And then you're going to add your sand, whether you've got your block or not there. If you don't need it, then it doesn't help, right? Because it's not going to make you more fine-tuned in your hip, because if your hip goes that far, then it just goes that far. If you need it, you need it. Use the props wisely. Stretch the right arm open, let your head turn to the right, and rotate your neck. Feel that simple turn of the head. Feel the belly move with the breath. Now the left leg could bend a little bit more, right? Again, that kind of cruises you into the back layer of the hip, up into the back of the waistline around the kidneys. Yeah, you might as well consider them to be quite a developing relaxation in the kidneys from this experience. You're not making the position in the kidneys achy by these poses right now, these final poses. So it ought to feel like it's a nice kind of massage in those organs. Okay, so when we do take over with the belt here, you might elaborate on this slowly. So I'm going to move the sand off the right leg. And I get a feel of the thigh muscles kind of crossing over to the right thigh, crossing to the left. So I don't really change that much, but what I do change is what's under what's supporting my leg, right? My right leg. So when I move that right leg up towards my chest, I'm going to try to keep it kind of a hip spiral. Then I get my belt under my right foot, and then I reach it back over to the left. Maybe put my hand onto that right outer hip. Encourage it to go across. So the fiber kind of, it's not gathering the fiber as much as you're trying to encourage it to cross over. It's different than using your sand. You don't have to palpate your hip if you don't feel like it. You could stay with the specifics of reaching through your right foot. Yep, that's good. So get a feel of that motion. And then if the inner leg muscles are really waking up in this progression, okay, you can feel how your tail is in an uncertain place right now, your tail. It's not tucking, it's not really arching, it's in. That's a term used often. Keep the tail into the body. So really focus right now on the sensation of a micro bend of your right knee. Micro bend that knee, breathe. Okay, Then we come around, we're gonna roll onto the back, we're gonna have the right foot to the left knee, we're gonna hook the hands under the left thigh, or you're gonna get your belt under your left foot and stretch up the leg and pull back. It's kind of different than you're used to doing, so that's fun to do. And if it doesn't feel good with the belt, then get rid of it and hold the back of your leg. But you can hold up higher at the back of the leg. You can hold down from where you are, right down to the upper thigh. But when you are maneuvering that musculature to draw in, can you let your eyes relax? Kind of feel the significance here in the back muscles of the waist. Okay, now bend the left knee, take the belt off if it's on your foot. Okay, I want you to uncross at the knee, and then when you are hugging the back of the legs, you're gonna take a couple spinal rolls, so coming up, and then shifting back, and coming up. Try to keep it so it's spinal. This is if you're on a hardwood floor, you want your mat, right? Now, last time you come up, you're gonna come up and turn so that you're gonna get your blankets in a stack. So this is all in front of my body from my hip up. I'm gonna take a stack of blankies and I'm gonna also put my bolster in front of that, so right next to it. So I'm gonna set it for a side sage, okay? Yummy pose. Okay, so when I lean in, I've got my bolster right next to my thigh. I have a block overhead, and then my sand and my block on the inside of my left knee. So I didn't leave anything out but a belt. Okay, so come into the side sage with your hip balanced on top of the, actually the sand is balanced on top of your hip, isn't that right? The exterior. So now we're moving from this kind of intensive movement pattern we did for quite a while into this slower progressive kind of soaking up the work, right? Absorbing, processing the practice. So these poses might be quite kind of inducing, right? Since we're doing just a handful of final poses for the nervous system. So you might notice if you do activating poses, then slow, that it's even more calming. You appreciate the slow. So feel where there's that length on that left side and layer in here through the side bones of the leg and the ribs all the way up higher. Okay, be sure that left hand is supported. So if it feels like the block is a little bit low and you're forcing your hand, then you're going to lift it up a little bit. Or take the arm behind you or beside you and let it rest. That's okay. Now, if the sand is on your hip, you might work for a few moments on the sand on your ribs, or just emphasize the awareness of your breathing in your rib cage. Yeah, really relax the internal pressure and feel when you go right to the skin level with the breathing, with that tone. And I want you to keep this rib focus. So we're going to keep the props exactly the same. Not change them at all, but we'll change our orientation of our bones. So we're going to move our left arm open and we're going to turn onto our back, and our back is on that bolster, right? So we're in a horizontal chest opener. I've got my sand across my upper ribs. So there is that diaphragmatic, actually it's not the upper ribs, right? It's just below the sternum. So right where the ribs intersect. So I'm going to try to get my blanket so it works better for me under my head. So my blanket stack under my head is significant. I have a flat quarter full, then I've bunched up my blanket. It's still in a nice square. It's not out of alignment, my blanket. It's not in a wad, but I have it under my neck so it kind of stirs up length in my brainstem here. I like that feeling of connection from body to brainstem. It's an important wave of awareness I'm finding. So as I scoot my feet in closer to the seat, I spread the arms open. And what does that kind of wording do for you? I mean, sometimes cues are good and sometimes they're not, they don't land into your body that well. So feel what would be an experience, a concept here in your rib cage of motioning open. It's expansive on your inhale, and it's simple horizontal cross. Chest opener, simple cross layer position with the ribs. Let your eyes merge into the brain. Yeah, turning that brain into the experience of breathing in and exhaling, lengthening on the out breath. Now, as you go to side sage with the left hip down, notice these three poses, how simple they are that we're working through, how you turn to your left. You're going to take that sand so it's on the hip. I've got my block down. It's very easeful for me to angle into this. And now you might be changing your blanket a little bit under your head. You might flatten it. You might rise it up. Right arm reaches to the block, or it reaches open randomly just to kind of excite the movement in this side layer of your ribs. Even though you might feel like they're pretty well merged, right, left, midsection, each side connects right to a different set of organs, right side, left side, there's different organs on each side. So I think there's some curiosity with that layering of focus. Not that you have to name them and greet them all, but there is differences. And so especially to balance out the intensity. So give the second side its full focus, just like you did on the first, before your focus wavers completely out. Breathe so the ribs are moving with your breath. A few more moments. Arm reaches, head relaxes. Get that full rotation, rib cage open. Now, when you move your right limb from overhead or openness, right, it might be expanding out. Take some care now. We're going to use the hands for a final memento. We're going to rotate, scoop in, and then come up, spiraling to come up. And then we're going to take the sand off. And then I want you to sit on your bolster and take a position here for a moment where your feet are together, your knees are open, and you're going to lean down to Baddha Konasana. So kind of find what this feels like in your hips, in your thighs, in your back. Okay, now lift up and then reach back for your blankets. If there's one kind of crossed over, just unfold it so it's flat-ish. Sit back on your blankets, push your bolster forwards, and then take a block set under the bolster. So the blocks are mid to high height. If you've got a long leg set, then you can put your blocks higher so you don't fall off. And then we stretch our feet out. We hold on to the bolster for a second with the bolster flat onto the block, so we're not trying to hold it overhead, but lean down. Feel how the spine arches. Feel that tailbone spatially moving back. Just give a few seconds here so the legs understand the assignment. And then as you slide your hands back beside your legs, you're going to bring a leg at a time up onto the bolster. Keep it just the bolster height. And then I'm going to move a blanket away and then place my head back onto my blanket. And if you want a little more lift with your back, you could put your other blanket under your pelvis here. That can be kind of nice. So it's just giving that descent of the leg up and then down into a relaxed pelvis. And then my legs are in a kind of so-so pattern. If I have my sand, I can put it from heart to belly. That's a little more strengthening. As you've maybe studied lately with the diaphragm, it's a different way of turning it in the internalization. So the arms are down by your sides, the palms are open. Come into your final Shavasana. If you have any hardware onto your face, any glasses, remove that right now so that your facial muscles can release any pressure of attention, and then letting the eyes relax back to the brain and receive your breath. Relax on the out breath. Feel where the shoulders are back, where the center spine relaxes down to the pelvis. Now with the belly moving with the breath, dial into that movement of the inhale, the movement of the connection of the diaphragm, motioning downwards, lifting up the abdominal organs. And then on the exhale, it lowers the organs back down and it sweeps back up to the base of the heart. So use that bag, that weight that you might have on for weight training for your breathing muscles. And then as soon as you get into that pattern and repetition, it kind of lulls you into a calmness. Now, if you feel very content here and you would like to stay, you're welcome to stay with this pose for whatever time you need. If that's appealing to you. And then for some of us, we might start to come out. So to come out, we're going to keep the sand on there and bring the arms so they actually reach back overhead, interlacing the fingers, stretching the arms back. Now, when you lower your hands to move any object from the core body, shift that aside. And then we'll reach our knees into the chest. And as you hug them in, hold the base of the knees just below at the shins. And then as you roll to the side, let your hands help you come up to sitting. And take a position here. Center your hips. Stretch out with the knees. Center your feet maybe underneath them. And lift up your hands at the base of the heart, lowering your brain down to the heart center, and surrender here. And gather a moment together, feeling that collective consciousness in practice. Receiving wellness, inhale, and exhalation, bowing into your heart. In gratitude, namaste.